Yo, 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 welcome back to the Out of the Box Show. I'm John Wallace alongside my co host, Chris Calderera, and we are excited to be back with you guys for another episode of the Out the Box podcast. LSU is 6-3 on the season and lost last weekend to the Alabama Crimson Tide, and this weekend, LSU takes on the Florida Gators. We have a packed show for you guys and cannot wait to get to it. But before we do all that, I want to give a huge shout out to the Boot Crew Media Network. I'm just kidding. We're not going to pout on this show. This is not the pouty show. This is the Out the Box podcast, and we are ready to get after it. BootCrewMedia.com and on social media at BootCrewMedia. Regardless of how bad the Tigers season may have turned out, or not, this isn't a bad season. I'm not going to say that, but regardless of how bad we may be compared to what your expectations of the LSU Tigers were at the beginning of the season, one thing remains the same. The Boot Crew Media Network is the place to go for constant content. Saints and Pels is loaded with Boot Crew Media content as we go throughout the season. We got BI sitting out again. We got Zion and the Pels on a little 2-game losing streak, I believe. I don't know if they won last night or whatnot, but you know how you do find out. Go to the Boot Crew Media Network, Pro Pels Talk, Pelicans Report. They are all over it, as well as Chris Voglogu. I forget how to say his name, but you can look him up. He is on Boot Crew Media. Chris knows who I'm talking about. He is all over the Saints content. Very intelligent, like the way he puts together his thoughts on how the Saints need to improve and the way he breaks down the game. BootCrewMedia.com and on social media at Boot Crew Media. Also, just like this is one of the best times of the year, fall weather, still LSU football season, still football season in general, best time of the year in the same way that it's the best time of the year. Blaine Loop is the best realtor of the year. He is with Forte Realty, and he is the man. I was actually texting with Blaine the other day, talking about holiday plans and just partying. Blaine is one of those guys that works night and day all the time, but also likes to have a good time, right? Blaine is the man. Blaine wants you to call or text him at 504-858-0031 for all your housing needs, whether it's looking to buy a home, sell a home, find people to rent out your investment property, or find you somewhere to rent. He does the quadruplets. He does the quadruplets of the real estate game. And even if you just need some advice, even if you just need some help with some real estate transactions, call or text Blaine Loop. See what he can do for you. 504-858-0031 for all your housing needs. All right, Christopher, if that is your real name.
It surely is.
First of all, a lot of people ask me, like I get asked this all the time, is your real name Jonathan? The answer is no.
Yeah.
And I realize that might be kind of unusual, but no, like straight up birth certificate name, John. But I don't know if anybody has ever been named Chris and not Christopher. What is your thoughts?
It's rare. It is rare. So look, being the good friend that I am, I did know that your actual name was John and not Jonathan.
You did?
Yeah, I did. And I do think, to your point, it is rare to see. I may have met in my whole life one actual like birth certificate was named Chris. The rest have been Christophers that go by Chris. So it is rare, but it's out there.
Diamond in the rough. But apparently that is not you. But you're still a great guy, right?
Oh,
that knows that knows a lot about football. All right. Obviously, there's no getting around it. We waited until Thursday this week. We had to kind of recover. Obviously, LSU fell at the hands of the Alabama Crimson Tide by a score of 42-28. A lot to talk about, a lot to get to in that game. We got the Florida Gators coming to town this Saturday. Baton Rouge, another Louisiana Saturday night. 6:30 game, I believe, in Tiger Stadium. Going to be a packed day. We are gonna be tailgating, so come on by and see us. Hit me up, and I'll let you know where the spot is. Or actually, I'll just say it. We're by the law school, so if you kind of walk around the law school, look for the out of the box flag flying and the House Bar and Tigerland flag that will be flying at the tailgate. But Chris, I know you have a lot of thoughts on the LSU Alabama game, and we were talking before the show. kind of doing a rundown of what we wanted to talk about and how much we really wanted to dive back into the Alabama game. But before I let you loose, one thing I do want to say is it really did kill me last week to be doom and gloom on this show. Like as well as anybody, I really do like the sunshine pump and be an optimist around sports. I feel like you, Luffy, and Rory, and a lot of our friends like to be more realist about the situation that we're in. But last week it just felt too real, right? Like it just felt like exactly what was going to happen happened, right? And like I said, I don't want anyone to mistake, the lack of faith that LSU was going to go in to beat Alabama. Obviously, we were cheering on Bama as much as the rest of LSU Nation, but I don't take any comfort in the fact that I was right. Like that was the first thing. Like I was talking about it at work with some people last week, and we walked in on Monday and they're like, "You happy? You were right." And I'm like, "No, I'm not happy. Of course, it was terrible. It's still as much as I tried to prepare myself and try to make myself like numb to it beforehand, it still sucked, right? Like it's still just it. You know what I think the worst part about it is that we were in it, right? Like this wasn't like one of those like games where you weren't in it from the start. We were tied at half. It was 21-21 at half. At the end of the third quarter, you are losing by a touchdown. Your quarterback goes down. Jaden Daniels with the rough hit. We're going to break it all down, but I just wanted to get that out of the way. It didn't feel good putting out an episode where I was doom and gloom on the Tigers. But yeah, Chris, I know you have a lot of thoughts on it. Maybe start with your zoomed out view, your 10,000-foot view of kind of what this loss means for the season. And obviously all of our goals are pretty much, out of reach at this point. The Heisman race, the Natty, the win in the West, things like that. Those are kind of out of the picture, but thoughts on why this loss leaves the program at this point.
Yeah, well, I mean, in terms of just this season, John, what's interesting is I've got I wouldn't say a negative view. You said something earlier where it's like, I get that too. People say, are you happy that you were right? I think people mistake negative facts for negative people. Like I'm not a negative person, but I think people need to start asking themselves, are the facts the things that are negative? Because if they are, it's not my fault for telling you what those facts are. Like you and I both sat on this show and we said it wasn't going to bode well for LSU. That doesn't mean we wanted Alabama to win. It was just you and I were looking at the facts and we were like, I don't think this is a good matchup for us. We don't like being right about that. But to your question of what the loss does for the season, surprisingly enough, in a bit of positivity, you could end up in a better bowl situation than you ended up in last season if you win out. Because if you win out, you're going to be probably in contention for maybe a New Year's Six bowl, depending on how some things fall, because you won't have that fourth loss that we had last year to Georgia in the SEC championship. Like a lot of people forget, that was an LSU team that was cruising for the Sugar Bowl and probably would have even made the Sugar Bowl had we not been in the SEC championship game. As you know, Alabama, who wasn't in the game, ended up going to the Sugar Bowl, and we went to the Citrus Bowl. It is the Cheez-It Citrus Bowl. Yeah, it gets confusing with who's branding what. Yeah, but so in terms of just this year, you could end with a better bowl game. And I see that Brian Kelly gets up to the media and he starts talking about, well, look, you've got the opportunity to win back-to-back 10-game seasons. And far be it from me, John, far be it from me to turn my nose up at that and say, well, 10-win seasons, who needs them? Okay. I'm not that person. I think 10-win seasons are fine. Nobody is going to celebrate a 10-win season at LSU, but it is a good turnaround considering where we were when Brian Kelly first took over. However, I think that we need to look at the context of this year when we're talking about 10 wins, okay? Because realistically, should LSU win out, if they win out, LSU will have beaten nobody that they should have lost to. Or I'm sorry, they wouldn't have beaten anybody that they should have lost to. So like the Florida States, you were supposed to lose to them, or that was going to be your tough game. You lost. Alabama, your tough game. You lost. Ole Miss, that was a close one. You lost. And now you're going to play, the Floridas of the world who aren't great. You're playing Georgia State. You're playing Grambling. Like, you're stacking all these wins up against teams that, no.
But you're supposed to beat.
But
you're supposed to beat them.
Yeah.
As LSU, as the powerhouse program that is LSU, that, we claim to be, in which, obviously it is still a powerful program in college football. It is experiencing kind of a transition period to Brian Kelly, but you're right. Like that, I think, one day this week, Matt Moscone on his show was echoing a similar, thought process. It's like, how do you go from, good to elite? And I think Brian Kelly has kind of said that too in some of his press conferences. It's like, it takes this, it takes time to go from good, like you're a good team, right? You beat most of the teams you played. 9-3. Hell, if you go 9-3, 75% on a test. If I got that on a test in college, I was at the house bar, within 30 minutes, like celebrating. A 75 on a test was electric for me. Obviously, it depends on your scale, right? And my scale was a little bit lower than my colleagues at school, but yeah, I get what you're saying. It's like, yeah, we didn't do anything impressive. We didn't, it is impressive to win 75% of your games. College football is difficult, but then on the flip side, you're like, yeah, if a few different things go our way, like if we play Florida State, if we don't, obviously, I think, I think you'd probably agree that we need to get rid of the big opener game. That has not worked out with us. You don't agree with that? Okay, I'm going on that. But, I think if we play Florida State again, I think it's a lot closer of a game. I think we should have beaten Ole Miss. And we were in it against Alabama. It's just like we're not at a position right now as we sit to be good enough to win those types of games, those types of big games. And that's that next level that Brian Kelly needs to get this team at or to.
Yeah. Well, and John, here's the thing too. It's like, okay, a 10-win season is fine in in a vacuum. 10-win seasons are nice.
In the regular season, 10-win, it should be like a 10-win regular season. Like now you play so many like different games that, think about it. When LSU won the Natty in 2019, we played 15 games. Like if you say like if there was some sort of weird world, like I don't know, say, whenever they initiate the 12-team playoff, right? And you a team that's 9-3 like LSU potentially makes the 12-team playoff. I don't know exactly how it would shake out or whatever, but say a team like LSU who's 9-3 or 10-2 makes the playoff and plays 2 extra games. That gets you to 14 games. And then can you really celebrate a 10-win season? So I get what you're saying. It's like, I think a 10-win season every year, LSU should never lose more than 2 out of 12 regular season games. I think that would be a lot more of an accomplishment than just saying, oh, we won 10 games out of, if you get the extra game in a bowl game or whatnot. I think it needs to be based on the regular season.
Well, especially when you have such a prolific offense. And maybe, this can take us into a little bit of what happened at Alabama. But look, last year you won 10 games and it was great. I look back at last season, I'm like, man, what a fun year that was. But it was the context of you had a brand new coach, you had a brand new staff, you had new players. There was some expectation this year that we would see some growth on both sides of the ball. We saw it in offense. We saw an exponential growth on offense. We saw a huge regression on defense. It's one of the worst defenses that we've ever seen. And for Brian Kelly to get up on the podium on Monday after getting his butt handed to him and saying, oh, yeah, well, guys, the answer was easy. It was just put a spy in. Brother, everybody saw that by drive number 3 from Alabama. Like what that's just like malpractice to one, not enter that game with a mindset of like, hey, Jalen Milroe's gonna want to run the ball on us. He's gonna want to break, contain, and do what he does. Malpractice on that part, but even more so malpractice. You went into the locker room and didn't make any adjustments. I can't understand. I can't fathom that. So don't come up to the podium and tell me, oh, well, we've got a shot to win 10 games this year. With this offense, you should be in the national championship conversation. Jaden should be in the Heisman conversation. We shouldn't be talking about, well, shucks, gee, golly, we might get to 10 wins if we win out. Brian Kelly and I are on two different planets with that. I don't get it.
Definitely get what you're saying, Chris. And I agree with you on the fact that it does not feel like the adjustments are being made, right? Like we've seen enough one of Alabama this year. We know Jalen Milroe's weaknesses, right? Like he's got an arm, he's not that great of a passer, and he's not that great of a quarterback. He, to me, on Saturday, and the people I was watching the game with, seemed more like a running back. Everybody was like, "Oh, the running back's running the ball." I mean, he ran all over us. He didn't do it as artistically as Jaden Daniels did. I mean, that play when Jaden Daniels like made the guy completely whiff was absolutely insane, like Heisman moment right there. But yeah, Milroe, we knew what he was, right? And all you had to do, if you could have stopped him from just running for 20 yards on a 3rd and 11 or whatever, like that seems to me to be the biggest difference in the game. We can talk about the horse collar, we can talk about the targeting call that was not called targeting. We can talk about a few different mistakes, but going back to the adjustments that aren't being made. You know what we were talking about last year at this time is how genius Matt House was for making the adjustments at halftime. What changed? What changed? I don't understand. I mean, I definitely think that our defensive players, I think our talent took a step back this year, as far as defense goes. Obviously, you had Harold Perkins returning. Mason Smith is I just have to hope and pray that he's still coming off of his injury and out of shape. Mekhi Wingo's coming back. Like, I just don't understand how the defense's lack of adjustments, how it's night and day from last year. How everybody was talking about it like, oh, wow, we made the mistakes. Like, is it that everybody knows who Harold Perkins is now and he can't be that big of a factor because they're keying on him? Is it because we have an absolutely depleted secondary? Like, I just don't understand how. I mean, everybody was very high on Matt House last year. Everybody was like, oh my gosh, this guy's great. Like, coming from the Chiefs, he knows how to go into the locker room at halftime and say, all right, boom, 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 this is what we're doing wrong. And then you don't get that this year. It doesn't make sense. I don't fully understand it. I don't have an answer for it. I'm not like, I hate to be the guy that's sitting here calling out problems that doesn't have solutions. But it is just kind of mind-boggling to think this time last year, everybody was like, we got to keep Matt House. There were talks that Matt House was going to get a coaching job after his performance last year. He was
an assistant coach of the year conversation last year. Like that's how crazy it was, John. And like you said, we saw actual adjustments at halftime. Like you could notice the adjustments that Matt House made at halftime. And yeah, you're correct in that the transfer player situation last year, so the kids that we got from the transfer portal on defense were better than the ones we got this year. But there's no excuse for this defense to look like they've received no, like it looks like no improvement. Brian Kelly said we're night and day between the Missouri game and now. He said that leading up to the Alabama game. I mean, you can go ahead and put that quote next to Ed Ogeron's 2020 quote of our defense is going to be better this year than it was last year. Like, oh my goodness, man, what a smokescreen that was. I don't know. I don't know what's happened with Matt House, John, and I understand the hesitancy to, you never want to be the, oh, here's a problem with no solutions. But when Matt House is tied in the country for the highest paid defensive coordinator job, you expect more out of it. You talent or not, you don't expect your head coach on Monday to say, yeah, shucks, we should have put a spy in. It's like, man, that's a pretty basic level of football we're talking here for the highest paid DC in the country.
Yeah, I think that's more of an acceptable statement at a press conference in game one, not in game number 9.
Yeah.
I do agree with you on that. Yeah. Let's talk about a little bit of the good. Jaden Daniels looked fantastic until he got hurt. I do want to hear your thoughts on the nasty hit that Jaden Daniels took. He looked good. Our offense was moving the ball. We were in it at half. You go into halftime tied up with Bama on the road, like biggest stage, you're doing something right? Like Jaden Daniels knew that he had to get the ball in the end zone. We answered every time that Bama put points on the board as well. It just like you said, dude, it just feels like such a travesty and such a crime. Not to sound like Stephen A. saying travesty, but it really does, like having this offense that can compete with Bama. Like, I mean, dude, if you look at years ago, it's like LSU putting up even 28 points on Bama on the road just wasn't even a thing. And then now all of a sudden you have this prolific offense. And look, we were still in the game when Jaden Daniels went down, right? I believe we were down 2 scores. Was that right? We were down 2 scores, but you're never out of it when Jaden Daniels has the ball on offense, right? I was wrong. I did predict that this was going to be more of a low scoring game. I thought that, Nick Saban was going to try to run the ball all over us. I even don't think Nick Saban was thinking that Milroe was going to have the type of running game that he did on Saturday. But yeah, it just, like you said, it stinks. It stinks. Like, how many more opportunities are you going to get? I know Bama, everyone's talking about how Bama is not what they normally are, and that's fine. College football as a whole is down this year. You look at Georgia, they're not this dominant team that we've seen out of there in the past few years. Like, there's not one team this year in college football that you're like, all right, yeah, they're top notch, like nobody's touching them. It's just not like that. So regardless of whether you think Bama's taking a step back, like how many more opportunities, hopefully Brian Kelly and the recruiting classes will catch up. The 2 seasons prior to Brian Kelly were rough, and that definitely takes, that takes longer than 2 years to rebuild. It's like having a reputation. Like, you build up your reputation for so long, and then it only takes a little bit amount of time to lose your reputation, right? So 2 years prior to Brian Kelly definitely set the program back more than 2 years. But how many more opportunities are you going to get to have a prolific offense like this, to have a Malik Neighbors, a Brian Thomas? Like, I thought Kyron Lacey had a good game on Saturday. Logan Diggs, Josh Williams had a few good runs. Like, it hurts. It hurts. And that's, we've kind of known that throughout the season, right?
Yeah.
But yeah.
I mean, so you asked about the Dallas Turner hit on Jaden Daniels. Absolutely dirty play. For anyone that argues that it wasn't, I mean, it's kind of the textbook definition. He left his feet. He led with his helmet. He hit Jaden in the head or neck area. He drove Jaden into the ground. Like everything that you could illegally do in one play except murder the man, Dallas Turner did it. And to say that this is some one-off thing, Dallas Turner did it last year against Quinn Ewers in Texas, on what I would say was a dirty play. This has been Alabama's MO since Nick Saban has been here. They play with a level of physicality that is borderline, and they're fine with the consequences of that. On the contrast, LSU doesn't play with that physicality right now. We used to. We don't play with it anymore. And I think that it's a big sign of where the programs are at. So you don't lose a game on one play. You don't lose a game on a penalty like that. Like you said, you're never out of it with Jaden Daniels. But it's just unfortunate to see. And, you say, well, Brian Kelly just needs, like, I'm curious, genuinely, when do you think LSU can realistically compete for a national title? Because I don't think it's next year. Like, I really, with the players that we have leaving on offense, I'm not sold on Garrett Nussmeier being a national championship quarterback. You know what I think? I think that if he plays his best ball, we can win 10 games again, and Brian Kelly can hang a banner from the podium and say three straight seasons of 10 wins in a row. I don't think it's going to be enough to cut mustard on a national championship, even with an expanded playoff. So I'm genuinely curious as to, one, when it's going to happen, and two, what your thoughts are, because man, it just seems, and maybe I'm a prisoner of the moment right now, but it just seems like we're further away from that ultimate prize than I thought we were.
So a couple things to say to that. One, I think it's very hard for Garrett Nussmeier to come in a situation like that on the road at Bama. Nussmeier has started or has played enough games, but you don't get that experience, and you don't get that in-game flow. That voice in your head telling you, how to put a finesse on a ball in a live game setting. You don't get that from coming in spotty here and there whenever your quarterback goes down, and then Jaden Daniels comes back in for one play, and everyone's like, okay, well, Nussmeier's out again, and then he comes back in. You don't get that unless you're a consistent starting quarterback in the SEC. Do I think that Jaden Daniels needs to be the starter and should have been the starter this whole season? Absolutely. He's in the Heisman race. Do I think Garrett Nussmeier is a serviceable quarterback that could lead this LSU team to have a great season? I don't necessarily know what the ceiling is for Garrett Nussmeier, a Garrett Nussmeier led team as a whole. I think he's a serviceable quarterback. I think him being in, taking first team reps day in and day out will definitely help his situation, his rhythm, and he will improve. I mean, Chris, though, if you look at the program right now, like we're halfway there. Like we don't even need a defense. I say we're halfway there. We're more than halfway there. We have an offense that could literally compete for a national championship this year. We have an offense that, I would say that we may not see again for a while, but we had a very good offense 4 years ago when we won it all. And I say it all the time, and you always have to preface it, but you never want to compare a team to 2019 because they're the greatest team in college football history. And I will get in an argument with anybody that tries to dispute me on that. What I'm saying is that there's technically three sides of the ball, if you want to count it: offense, defense, and special teams. You clean up the defense just to a point where they are good enough, where they aren't horrible. We could be competing for a national championship. I think if we play Florida State again, that game was close until the third quarter. Everybody forgets that. LSU was winning, I believe, by 3 at halftime of the Florida State game, right?
Yep.
I believe they were winning at halftime. The score of that game is not indicative of the full 60 minutes. Ole Miss, down to the wire. Bama, fourth quarter, down to basically Jaden Daniels getting hurt. Anything could happen. I think we probably would have lost, but I think we're closer than you think, even with this bad defense. Can you imagine if we had a defense that could just not give up 550 yards or 600 yards to these teams? Like, I think we're closer than you think. And I think, well, hold on. I think that as Brian Kelly's, people always talk about, oh, Les Miles won a national championship at LSU with Saban's players. I feel like once, which I think that's bull. But anyway, once Brian Kelly gets is established in the LSU football program, once he is able to bring in his own classes and have guys that are not guys, if you will, I think we're close, and I think Brian Kelly is on the right track. Yes, there's been a few decisions. Yes, there have been a few questionable things that have been said by him. Yes, it's like, wow, how obvious is that there should have been a spy? Like, everybody knows that. I think he's just trying to keep the wheels on. I think he's trying to get through this season. I think he it is a little concerning that he misjudged this football team prior to the season. I do agree with that, but I think it's just going to take some time. Like I said, those 2 seasons prior to his hiring set us back longer than 2 seasons. Maybe not next year. I don't know if Garrett Nussmeier is the guy. He has the tools. I don't know if he has the touch, right, if you will. I don't know if he's got that it thing yet. He could, right?
Yeah,
But you can't know that until you see him play a full season.
right.
So I think we're closer than you think. I have to hope that, right? Because I am an optimist about LSU football, even though I haven't been recently. But yeah, I mean, dude, if we just have a defense that, I mean, our defense doesn't have to be, DBU every single year. Like this year, if we just have a defense that's decent, we could win the Natty, which is crazy.
But John, you're taking this year's offense and a potential better defense next year, but you can't do that because you're losing Malik, you're losing Jaden, you'll probably lose Brian Thomas. Like this feels very 2013 to me. In 2013, LSU had a very good when I say very good offense, very good for Les Miles standards. Okay, Zach Mettenberger, Odell Beckham, Jarvis Landry, Alfred Blue. We had some studs on that team. Okay, that team finished 10-3. You will remember that was one of the first years in the Les Miles era that the defense was bad. I think the Georgia game, we should have won. We were on the road to Athens, and our defense, very reminiscent of the Alabama game, just could not buy a stop, and we lost on like the last play of the game. Okay, and everybody said, oh, well, once we get a defense, we'll be better. What happens? 2014 rolls around. You go 4-4 in the SEC with an 8-5 record. You had the same offensive players. You had Odell, you had Zach, you had Jarvis, and you still couldn't find a way to do it, even with a better defense. So I understand what you're saying. I do think it doesn't necessarily correlate, though, a better defense, because you're going to lose a lot on offense. And I'm not writing Garrett Nussmeier off, but I am saying I'm not expecting the kid to come in here year one when, like you said, he hasn't even got a full season under his belt and compete for a national championship. For him, I think he's 2 years down the line from doing something like that. What's your defense going to be in 2 years? You would hope it's better, but then maybe your defense is better in 2 years and you don't have the offensive firepower, So it's like, man, I guess the bad taste in my mouth comes with you had the national championship offense this year. It's rare. It's hard to win national championships. It's rare to have an offense this good. And it looks like there was no diligence done on defense, and it looks like there's still no diligence being done as we're 9 games into the year, which is super disappointing for a head coach we pay $10 million to. Super disappointing for a defensive coordinator who we pay $2 million to. I'm beside myself with this coaching staff right now, if you can't tell.
Chris, you want to hear not a hot take? You're right. You're right. No, I mean, like you are. That is an accurate thing to say, that just because you have the offense this year, that I mean we could literally be flipped around next year to not put up any points, yards. Like I get 100% what you're saying. Next year the offense is going to look completely different. Like no, like that is one fact. Next year our offense is going to look completely different. We are not going to put up 550 yards of offense. We are not going to have a quarterback that's rushing for one of our leading rushers for the game. We are not going to have a quarterback probably with as high of a completion rate as Jaden Daniels has this year. Garrett Nussmeier, it just, obviously you have a whole offseason. He is a very talented quarterback, but I don't think he's as accurate as Jaden Daniels. So you're right. It just, if you look at it in a vacuum, which is so easy to do.
I get what you're saying. I think it's fair.
But you're very right. You're very right. We were halfway there this year on a one-off season, and even if we won the Natty this year with a defense that wasn't terrible and our good offense, next year we could come out and be 8-4. or 7-5. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
so what you're saying is like from a program perspective, and granted, like you got to give the benefit of the doubt. Brian Kelly's in year 2 at LSU. He does have a long coaching record that you can look at in previous years, but we have to look at just his LSU resume thus far, and what you're saying is that I don't know if he's going to be able to consistently put together a good offense and a good defense as well as good special teams. Like it's hard to have all three come together.
It is. It is. And I feel like, I guess at the end of the day, I feel like we were a little oversold on Brian Kelly. A lot of people compared him to, the attention to detail of Nick Saban. And look, Brian Kelly's a good coach. I'm not saying he should be fired. I think the program is heading in the right direction. But don't tell me that this is a Nick Saban-esque guy. Nick Saban doesn't roll out with a defense looking as bad for 9 games like that. I mean, it's unacceptable. That should be unacceptable at LSU. And I think that a lot of people are using the excuse right now of like, well, he's in year 2. And I understand that. I'm not – look, if we win 10 games this year and the defense didn't look that bad, I would be like, joy to the world. Brian Kelly's doing a good thing. It's just it looks like nothing is being done. And maybe they're doing something behind closed doors. Maybe I don't know the whole story, but it looks like no improvements are being made, no development of players on the defensive side of the ball.
You are right. You're right to feel everything you're feeling. You're right. That is what it's like to be an LSU fan. Chris, I don't know. Maybe we are just slowly paying off the devil from 2019, right? Like I remember sitting there, when we were watching the SEC championship or the playoff game in 2019. And I looked at whoever was watching the game with, and I was just like, dude, I don't care if we lose for the next 10 years. I don't care if we go 0-12, never make a bowl game, never make the Natty again. I don't care. And now the football gods are coming back to get what's theirs. So no, I don't know. Here's to hoping that Brian Kelly can first the first step is to get the personnel right. Like this year on defense, the personnel is not there. The personnel is not that. We have a guy from Syracuse Southeastern.
Syracuse,
I believe.
What?
Right. Well, that's what I'm saying. You got to have guys that are coming in top 5 4-star recruits that you can develop. So we have to give him the benefit of the doubt until he does that. Now, if in year 6 we still look like this, we got a problem, right? But I don't know. We're gonna find out what's gonna happen. But maybe Matt House should have taken a head coaching job at the end of last season because he lowered his draft stock this year.
Big time. Big time.
So, all right, let's clean up the Alabama talk. Enough. We did almost 35 minutes of Alabama talk, which we needed to, right? We needed to blow off some steam. Can you imagine, dude, if we would have recorded early on in the week, we would have been so just out of it, not caring. We would have cared, but we would have been mad. Yeah. We would have acted like we didn't care, but we really did care. That's like you whenever somebody gets mad at you or whatever, you're like, I don't even care. And it's like, well, you just said that in kind of a mad tone. So clearly you care at least a little bit to be able to get mad about it. But anyway, let's clean it up. Call Martine at Workbox. Martine is the man. Workbox can get you a portable restroom rental, porta potties, roll-off dumpsters, luxury restroom rentals, you name it. Call Martine at Workbox, 225-343-4886. All right, Chris, let's do a quick Florida segment. Florida stinks. They lost to Arkansas this past weekend, 39-36. They're 5-4 on the year. I think the main thing that LSU absolutely has to win this game for is to not have the Billy Napier argument. And I know Rory and Luffy love putting on Twitter I'm not pushing Napier, gif of Hanny. But yeah, the Gators come to the Swamp. I think LSU is going to get up for this game. It's trending towards the fact that Jaden Daniels is going to be the quarterback for this game. It is still Saturday night in Death Valley. I haven't checked the weather out.
Spotty showers.
Spotty showers.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting. Scattered showers during the day, staying cool for Veterans Day. And in the evening, you got mainly cloudy moving in with some isolated showers. The moon phase is a waning crescent and the UV index is low. High of 67, low of 60, 50% chance of rain on the day. Dude, I really do want to be a meteorologist one day. Just to like talk in that like up and down tone that a meteorologist uses. But yeah, I mean, Saturday night in Death Valley, I think LSU gets up, comes out for this game. I think LSU and Brian Kelly especially is going to pull out the stops to make sure that we take care of business against Billy Napier to not have everybody chirping him on that note. But thoughts on the 5-4 Florida Gators coming to town this Saturday?
Yeah, well, they're not good, but if you notice, the games that they have some success in on offense, they're playing crummy defenses. So I think it's hugely important that Jaden Daniels clears his concussion protocols and does end up playing, because I do think we're going to need him. I wouldn't be super confident with Garrett Nussmeier. Again, not down in Garrett Nussmeier. It's just not a fair situation for him to be put in the middle of the season. Hey, go out there and go play. You know, you can't really expect much out of somebody in that situation. But yeah, I think Florida's going to play tough. I think in the same vein of Brian Kelly, trying to avoid the chirping, Billy Napier's got some problems, and this is kind of he could change a lot of the narrative this season. He could buy himself some more time with a win in Death Valley against LSU. So I think that his team is going to play like that. I think he's going to coach like that. I think it's going to be a close game. I do like LSU in this one, especially if Jaden plays. But Florida sucks. But I would caution fans, don't let them catch you off guard, because they're gonna come here and they're gonna play you close.
Oh, I mean, there's no doubt about that. I think I would hate to be going to the Swamp to play this game. The LSU Florida game is always, like I saw on Wednesday, it was a sold out game already. So like, Tiger Stadium is going to be rocking. Florida State is going to show up. They are going to be ready to play. But yeah, I mean, that you don't want to let your guard down, right? Like, you just got kicked in the teeth going to Alabama. Jaden Daniels is a tough son of a gun. Like, I have no doubt that he's going to play. He has been practicing this week. I'm thinking that LSU, man, wow, I just saw this. LSU is 15.5-point favorites against Florida. I don't like that at all. And the over-under is 64.5. So, Chris, that kind of leads us into predictions for this game.
Yeah,
is LSU going to cover?
I don't think LSU is going to cover it. I love the under. I'll tell you that. I think that Jaden coming off of concussion protocols is tough. And look, our defense is bad, but I mean, Florida's defense is also not anything to write home about. I think, a scattered shower type of day, even if it's not raining at game time, I think that field could be a little sloshy. I like the under. I think LSU hangs on. Probably, I'm going to be optimistic. I'll say we'll win by 10. That's 2 scores to placate all the haters at home. But, I don't see us covering 2 touchdowns. I can certainly tell you that.
I feel like Florida, you just don't know what you're going to get, right? They haven't played really anybody of note this year. They lost to Utah early on in the season. Then they beat Tennessee, who isn't great but not horrible. They lost to Kentucky. They put up a wide range of points in each game, right? So like, some games will come out and they scored 22 against Charlotte. That's a fantastic win they have on their resume. And then they'll go to, I believe they went to overtime with Arkansas this past week. So I don't know. I think the over is, I don't really take unders. So I would have to say it's going to go over. I'm thinking it's going to be LSU is going to come out. Jaden Daniels knows that he, is vying for a spot in the NFL draft. He also knows that his teammates are vying for spots in the NFL draft. I think we're going to come out slinging the ball. I don't know. Let's say 44 to 28. 44-28. That gets you to what, 32? What is that, 72? Gets you to 72 points, covers the over. And I believe just barely covers the spread, 44-28. I believe that's winning by 16 and the spread's 15.5. So I did not do that on purpose. I just I just threw out a score, threw something at the wall and saw what came back.
Yeah.
So, all right, Chris, you know what time it is. It's time to get on over to the House Bar in Tigerland. Shout out to House Bar in Tigerland, Jeff and Casey. I hope that I will see the boys from the House Bar in Tigerland out at the tailgate on Saturday. Casey made an appearance. He was signing autographs out at the tailgate for the, I believe it was the Auburn game. Was it the Auburn game? Yes, it was the Auburn game. Get on over to the House Bar in Tigerland. Best time of year. Christmas is coming up. Schedule a Christmas party over at the House Bar in Tigerland. Thanksgiving break, also another time. Thanksgiving is when everybody who decided to not be cool and go to places other than LSU for college. That's when they all come back in town for the first time. If you're a freshman, remember that, Chris? The guys that thought they were so cool. I'm not going to say any names, but they went to schools like, I don't know, Alabama. And they're like, oh, this is my first time coming home this semester. I've been getting homesick, whatever. Well, if you get homesick, the best thing to do is to get over to the House Bar in Tigerland. That is one of the best nights of the year in Baton Rouge. I will say that is the day before Thanksgiving. That way you can go to the House Bar in Tigerland, wake up on Thursday morning, hungover, and get to your Thanksgiving feast. And then the best part of it all, take a nap. But it all starts at the House Bar in Tigerland. Get on over to the House Bar in Tigerland. I guess it's fall now, but we're heading into the winter with the cold temperatures rolling in. So get on over to the House Bar in Tigerland. House Bar in Tigerland, and the House Always Wins segment sponsor. Chris, I haven't checked your record. How'd you do last week?
Yeah, so I think I went 0-2 last week, to be honest with you. Not super great. I think probably since being on this show with you, I might be 2-4 or something. I don't know how many episodes I've been on. I've got a slight losing record that we will correct for the fans at home.
Okay, so I have your record right here. So the Cardinals played the Browns on Sunday.
Yeah.
And the Browns beat the Cardinals 27-0.
Yeah.
So they were +8 in the game. And then you picked Nebraska -3 against Michigan State. And the final score of that game was 20-17 Michigan State. Yeah. So if Nebraska would have been +3, you would have pushed, though.
Yeah.
So you just have to think about things in terms of what could have happened.
See, I don't like the past, John. I live in the present. And here's what I can guarantee the fans. We're going 2-0 this week.
Okay, we got a guarantee. Let's go.
Yeah. So you know how much I like big spreads, John, and big spreads in the NFL. The New York Giants and the Dallas Cowboys are playing each other. The spread is 17. I'm not touching that with a 10-foot pole. I just thought it was funny to point out. It's very rare to see an NFL spread like that. Obviously, the Giants are dealing with quarterback issues. Daniel Jones is out for the year. The Dallas Cowboys are actually pretty good, surprisingly so. I'm actually going to pull a fast one here and bet the team that I thought I would never bet. And it's the New Orleans Saints, John. They're -3 against the Minnesota Vikings. And the reason that I'm betting that is because I think there's a lot of Josh Dobbs hype right now after that game-winning drive with Minnesota. I actually don't think he's going to play very well. The Saints, their strength is the defense. There's questions whether or not Justin Jefferson's going to play. Even if he does play, first game back from injury, not crazy about it. I think that the Saints are actually going to play well enough to cover the 3 there. So I like the Saints -3.
Yeah, I think whenever you have a quarterback coming in, the way Josh Dobbs did, I think it's they may have a game where they go off in their first game and everybody's like, wow, is this guy for real? And then they kind of come back down to earth in the next game. But I don't know if the Saints defense shows up. I do like that pick. Let's see. Perusing the NFL board. Wow, as I look at this, I don't like any of these games. Wow.
I don't love the slate. Didn't love the slate. Can tell you that.
All right. I got it. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Oh, man, the 49ers Jags is so filthy. All right, whatever. I don't take unders. 49ers Jags over 45.5. My reasoning for that is that the 49ers are on a 3-game losing streak, which is crazy after starting 5-0. The Jags are 6-2, coming off a win at the Steelers where they only scored 20 points. I think the points are going to be flying. I do. I don't know. It's just one of those gut feelings. I don't really have a massive breakdown for why I think that. It's in my gut, and that's what I'm going with.
I like it.
49ers, and the Jags over 45.5. Lock it in. College pick, Chris.
Yeah, so unfortunately, this number was a little bit better earlier in the week when I saw it. I still love the number now. It's Oregon -15.5 against USC. You ask me who's the worst defense, LSU or USC? My answer is it's a coin flip. Oregon's actually good. I think this number should be closer to 21 than it is to 14. So I like Oregon -15.5. I think they cover that with ease.
Man, no faith in old Lincoln Riley, huh? Man, don't you wish he would have been our coach?
Well, John, what would that look like? An elite offense and no defense?
Bad defense, yeah. Man, Brian Kelly and Matt House, maybe man, can you imagine an alternate universe where Brian Kelly was the coach of USC? I don't think he wouldn't fit. He wouldn't fit. You had to be kind of shady to be the coach at USC, I think.
Yeah.
All right, Chris, I'm going to do something that I do, this will be a throwback for some of our day one listeners. I'm going with the Chanticleers. Coastal Carolina. Coastal Carolina is playing Texas State. Huge matchup against the Bobcats. They're both second in their divisions. Coastal Carolina is second in the East. Texas State's second in the West. They're both 6-3 on the year. The over-under is 57.5. Coastal Carolina is the underdog. They're +2. I'm saying take them outright. Rory used to always say whenever we would do this segment, he would say, if you haven't been doing that well, which I pushed on my college pick of Ole Miss -3 against Texas A&M. Ole Miss should have been winning 21-0, but they had a field goal blocked, and A&M ran it back. And it should have never even been this close, but Ole Miss pushed. And then the Cowboys-Eagles over 47, that was like the lock of the century. I think the total was only like 51 points or whatever, but got the job done. So, anyway, all that to say, Coastal Carolina money line is where we're sitting for this week. That whenever what Rory used to say is, whenever you're down bad, you got to do something stupid to get back. Like you got to throw a Hail Mary to get back. And I don't think Coastal Carolina money line is that big of a Hail Mary. I just thought about Rory, my long lost podcast host.
Hope he's doing in the fam.
He is doing well. He's being a good father by raising his son instead of drinking whiskey and recording with us. So shout out to him. So all right. I think that about does it for this episode of the Out of the Box podcast. Thank you guys so much for listening. Chris, thank you so much for joining us. You are a great friend and co-host, and I could not do this without you. Shout out to the House Bar in Tigerland, Workbox LLC, Blaine Loop with Forte Realty, and the Boot Crew Media Network. Chris, one thing I forgot to mention on last week's podcast episode, recurring guest on the Out of the Box podcast. We got to get him on now that he is a World Series champion, Mr. Josh Smith. He also went to, I'm not going to do the Moscona Catholic High, but he did go to Catholic High. Was a grade below me, grade below us, but grade below myself at Catholic High. World Series champion. Can't ever take that away from him. He will go throughout the rest of his life saying that he was on a team. He did contribute during the World Series, and was a key player for the Rangers throughout this year. And he's so early on in his career. So here's to hoping that he racks up some more rings.
I agree. Kudos to him. Very, very awesome accomplishment. Good to see a local player like that have success in the MLB, despite the fact. Yeah.
Chris, say it's good to have a local Catholic High Bear win a World Series.
I will not say that because I do not feel it, nor do I believe it. But it is good to have an LSU ball player win.
I respect it. Chris, thank you so much. We will see y'all next week.